and welcome to another adventure in history. And I hope that you're having a great night, or morning, or evening, or whatever it might be in your time zone. I hope that the world is treating you nicely, and I hope that you are accumulating positive karma. Whatever you're up to, just hope that things are working out for your way. You're having a much improved evening. This is good. Improved evenings are always better than declined evenings. Glad you're feeling better, my friend. I know how much that sucks. I've been through that myself. It sounds like you feel 58% less dead. Hey, that's 58% more alive, right? Or you're just not sure where that 58% went to. It's like, I know it's not dead. I'm just not sure if it's alive yet. It's like dead-ish. uh, yeah, I understand. It's a tough thing to do. I'm not dead yet. Welcome everybody in. Kyle, it's good to see you. So hello to everybody. Fiddlia, good to see you with the beautiful adventure hats. Um, yeah, it's a Tuesday, and it's a viewer request night because that's what we do on Tuesdays. And this is what everybody asked for. So everybody wants Catherine the Great, so we're gonna do Catherine the Great on tonight's stream. So it's a fun time for us to talk about. Interesting figure, really sort of divisive in a lot of ways, and has a pretty long run of things when it comes to being politically active. But that's what happens when you're a European noble. You get thrown into the game pretty early, and you got to figure out how to play the game. What's up, Lumpy? How's it going? Good to see you. Only one picture of a castle tonight, Lumpy. But lots of old portraits and a map. You know, I wasn't going to get around this without a map. Not nearly as many as the Teutonic Order, but you know, that's what we get. It's quite a ways in. We've got quite a ways in. Catherine the so-so, the moderately decent, right? Not having a good time in real life this week. Lumpy, I know that you've been mentioning that you've been doing a lot of like really busy makeup work and group work and trying to fix work that other people had done, and it just sounds exhausting. And I know that part of this is to do with the fact that you got that promotion and now you're sort of like over things, but I think that if there is a way to view this as a positive, this is just me trying to put a spin on it. Some of this might be because the people that you work for recognize your brilliance, and maybe that's part of it. I don't know. It might not be. It might not be. But I think you're a cool person, and I think you're really friggin' smart, and you know your job well. It's gone from tough to impossible to straight up illogical. Well, now that sounds like you're dealing with a customer. Because that's kind of what customers do. Like, make this work, and you're like, that's literally not how it works. Literally not how you can make things work. And they're like, but that's the way it has to for this price point in this way. And you're like, chemistry says no. And they're like, well, money says yes. And then your bosses are like, go make it happen. I know that from an IT standpoint. This is not the way that the internet and computers work, but we want it to work this way. Go figure out how to make it happen, because the president of the college said so. Yeah, I understand that on a sympathetic level. I can't necessarily directly empathize for the organic chemistry angle of it, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean. What's up, Cave Geek? Good to see you. How's things? Hope you're doing well. Yeah. Things are thingy. Well, I think that's okay. Because you could have used many other adjectives there to describe things. And the fact that you didn't choose a more harsh adjective is indicative of at least okayness, I would think. But again, I could be wrong. In organic chemistry, there is the lingering assumption that the chemist did not try hard enough. Oh, sure, because, there's there's not rules or literally laws of chemistry that we have to work with, like thermodynamics or stuff like that. If you can't figure it out, it just means you're not working hard enough. This is the same thing, and that is the same thing with IT as well, because especially the people that are doing the demanding don't really understand how to do your job or what you're actually doing. There's just this assumption that if you didn't figure it out, you weren't smart enough, or you didn't try hard enough, because we're paying you for this, gosh darn it, right? Even when Wikipedia says otherwise. Well, it throws glitter to glitter. It's okay, man. It's always okay to vent. This is a safe place. We've all dealt with less than ideal situations here. We all know that you're not trying to poop on the parade. So you're always welcome to vent the frustrations, and everybody is, right? I mean, we're all friends here. We've all been around enough. And my wife is like, this is why I don't do science anymore. My wife used to work for a job where the guy that owned the company was like, do this, and all of the scientists that worked for him were like, it doesn't work that way, and he's like, we're going to do this anyway, and we're going to throw millions of dollars at it. And then my wife is like, but it doesn't work, and he's like, oh, shut up, we're going to do it anyway. So my wife also understands that angle that you're dealing with. So lots of people in here feel that warm and fuzzy place, right? We're all okay here. But I do hope that in our brief time together tonight, we can enjoy ourselves and have a good time and learn a little bit, and maybe make fun of people in the past. Maybe that'll help us make fun feel a little bit better. Make fun of history and make fun out of history. That's the goal, right? If only the ones in charge actually understood the science, right? Or, if only the people that were demanding your computer systems do this understood computer systems. Yeah, I understand. Or if only the people demanding that you teach a certain way knew how to teach. All of these things are things that I understand. But before we get too far down in the thing, let's get over here and start tackling our topic for the night, which is, again, Catherine the Great. So this is a viewer request stream. This won the last viewer request poll, and I'm quite interested in talking about this. Catherine the Great is a very interesting figure. She is, again, kind of polarizing even during her day. A lot of people didn't necessarily appreciate her forthrightness, and a lot of people didn't really like the way that she ran the country. But, this is what happens when you put someone incredibly intelligent and capable in a position of power. They're going to tick off all the people that can't one-up them. And that's kind of what happens with Catherine in a lot of situations. All right, so first off, who is this woman, and from where does she arrive? Well, her dad is this guy. This guy is Christian August, and he was the prince of a state in the Holy Roman Empire called Anhalt-Zerbst. And he was a kind of a jerk, but he was in good with the Holy Roman Emperor, who we'll talk about a little bit later. And he makes his way all the way up to basically field marshal or general or whatever you want to call it, the top, one of the top military commanders in the Holy Roman Imperial Army. And because of his, wasn't he kind of a nobody? Well, I mean, he wasn't necessarily a nobody. He was a prince of the Holy Roman Empire. He was one of the more powerful military leaders, and he was the governor of an entire province. The thing is, nobody really liked him. And welcome, Maddie. If what you're after is he was kind of a nobody when it came to the social scene, absolutely. He was rather acerbic. He didn't really like people. He was not a very good conversationalist. He was very cold and very tactical. And it seemed like the military tactics that he might apply on the battlefield are going to get applied to raising his kids. Well, I mean, he's not known today outside of his daughter, but if you went back in time, this guy was somebody that everybody would have known because, again, there aren't very many princes in the Holy Roman Empire, and there aren't many people that get to command the emperor's armies. He was one of the very few that had Frederick's ear when it came to military stuff. One of the issues with the Holy Roman Empire, especially during this time period of the 1700s, is that it had gotten down to its like most fractured state, and there were so many of these tiny little things, tiny little polities and duchies and dukedoms and things like that, where it's really almost impossible to keep up with everybody. And for us looking back, it's just sort of a sea of names, and it's hard for us to kind of cut through the broadness of stuff. And I completely understand that. Like, us looking back, who the heck is this guy? But if we were to hop in the time machine, in the Wayback Machine, and go back with Mr. Peabody to, the 1730s, and we were in the Holy Roman Empire, everybody would have known this guy's name. Everybody would have known who he was. And everybody would have thought he was a jerk, pretty much. Even Frederick didn't really like the guy, but he understood how useful he was, especially with things like tactics. So, it's hard for us in a later day to organize all of these ideas. And even to a certain extent back then, it was hard for everybody to keep everybody else straight because of the whole, like, bajillions and bajillions of people that were nobility. He wasn't necessarily rich, and that's something that we could also add to it. His family, even though being a rather lofty, noble family, wasn't rolling in the dough. Part of that was because there's this whole big political machinations and schemes and crap, who's on whose side and blah blah blah. We don't necessarily have to go all the way back into his or into Catherine's dad's family, but suffice to say, they had money, and they ended up losing a lot of it because they made some pretty dumb investments. But that's kind of the story of almost all of the nobility at the time. But anyway, he's going to end up being governor of the Stettin province, which is in Stettin province, which is in Prussia, and that's going to sort of be his position when his daughter is born. Now, what about her mom? So here's her mom. Her mother is Joanna Elizabeth of Holstein-Gottorp, because, everybody has to have a bajillion names here. So Joanna of Holstein-Gottorp was actually substantially more connected than her husband. Her family was one of the most affluential people or groups in the entire Holy Roman Empire. Now, what's interesting here is that her branch of the family wasn't really that big of a deal, but she spent a lot of time with relatives who were a big deal. And specifically, she's going to be able to grow up in the big parties. She's going to get to go to all the balls. She's going to get to go to all of the like state dinners and stuff like that. She's going to get to Holstein, yes, but not that kind of Holstein, though she is rather pale. But of course, that was a sign of nobility back then, because you didn't have to go see the sun, which meant that you could stay inside all the day and do whatever you wanted to. Anyway, Joanna is a bit of a socialite, and she's also, well, a bit of a socialite is an understatement. She was a big socialite. She's also very calculating, and as many women had to be during this period of time, if you wanted to get anything accomplished, you sort of had to know how to play the game. You had to be able to read the landscape. You had to know which houses were like on the way up. You have to know which houses are kind of on the way down. You have to know who to flirt with and who to brush off and who to suck up to and who to, scorn. You have to know all of this stuff, right? Well, you could do whatever the Ricketts permitted you to do, right? Whatever. For some reason, that reminded me of Jiminy Cricket, or Rickety Cricket from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I don't know if you all watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but Cricket is a very unfortunate, well-intentioned individual that the main characters just perpetually mess over and ultimately destroy. That's just what happens. Anyway, at one point, and this is going to be an interesting connection here, one of Joanna's brothers was engaged to a princess of Russia, specifically this lady named Elizabeth. And we'll come back to that in a little bit, and that'll be very important. But Joanna had contacts within sort of the Russian sphere. And if you're wondering, like, wait a second, we're talking about Catherine the Great, who's the Tsarina of Russia. Why in the devil are we talking about all these people in Germany? It's because Catherine was German. She wasn't Russian. She marries in. And we'll get to that in just a second. Other family members. She's got some cousins that are up in Sweden. And if you've been around the stream, you'll know that Sweden had an empire for a while, and they were actually pretty powerful. And two of her cousins are going to end up being kings of Sweden. And she's got a second cousin, who's this guy named Peter, who is the heir to the Russian throne. So clearly, she's got some connections. Her dad has, connections. Her mom has connections, probably more. She's got cousins with connections. She's in the right kind of family circles, right? Peter was a bit of Peter wasn't particularly nice. No, he wasn't. But we'll get there. Now, she was born in April of 1729. Catherine was, but her birth name is Sophie. So her full name, if you want the entire name, Princess Sophie Friederike Auguste von Anhalt-Zerbst-Dornberg. Yep, that's her name. We'll just call her Sophie for the moment because it's a lot easier. What's up, Green Herring? Good to see you. So again, born in April 1729. What's up with the young life? Well, we know quite a bit about her young life because she actually wrote a lot, and she kept a journal that was preserved and has since been translated and published. So if you really want to read more about Catherine, you can actually go read translations of her diary that she kept for years and years and years, including some of the stuff that went all the way back into her childhood. My mouse. Sophie ironically sounded more Russian than Catherine. Yeah, probably so. My mouse is being kind of funny right now. There we go. All right. She was tutored, and she was tutored by a French scholar because that was sort of the thing at the time. French was the language of business in the world at the time, or especially in Europe at the time. And especially if you were in the upper echelons of royalty or nobility, yeah, lingua franca, exactly. That's where we get the phrase from. You're going to need to learn French. But what's interesting about this French stuff is that she also starts getting into some of the French philosophy stuff and some of the French political stuff. And what's going on in the background of a lot of this is the Enlightenment, right? So she's going to start reading a lot of this stuff even at a very young age. But she was pretty strong-willed right out of the gate. She demanded basically to like learn how to ride a horse, but she didn't want to learn how to ride side saddle, like the ladies did with the big dresses. She wanted to wear pants and ride like a man. She also demanded to learn how to sword fight, and was tutored in sword fighting as a kid. So this is like, pretty strong-willed, independent young woman. And she really didn't like the court stuff. Her mom started dragging her to these parties at really, really young ages. Every other fantasy protagonist, exactly, right? I'm Arya Stark. Yeah, exactly, Arya Stark much. Right. Let's just say that fantasy takes notes from reality quite frequently. She really didn't like going to the parties. Her mom was dragging her out to these things early on. And specifically, her mom was already trying to pull strings and get her engaged to people when she was like 8 years old. Because her mom had this idea that she could get her daughter to be the Empress of Russia. So remember, Joanna has these ties to Russia through her brother's engagement to Elizabeth. So she had these friends over in Russia and started to try to like take them over and do all this stuff. So she eventually, Sophie, ends up going over at one point to Russia to meet some people, specifically to meet Peter, who again is the heir of Russia, and like immediately hates him, just hates his guts. Now, Sophie did have children, or I'm sorry, had brothers and sisters, and she actually liked some of her brothers. Unfortunately, the family arrangement wasn't really good for kids. They almost never saw their dad, and the boys were kind of kept a little bit separate. So even her siblings that she liked, she didn't necessarily get to spend a lot of time with. So she started reading a lot, even at a young age, because she found herself sort of socially isolated, except for these parties that her mom was dragging her to. And if we read her diary, and if we're to believe it, she really hated her young life. She hated the idea that she was pampered. She hated the idea that she couldn't just go out and do whatever she wanted to. Like she wanted to go ride out into the woods and camp, or she wanted to just go walk around in the city and talk to people, but she was sort of kept cooped up. She got very, very bored with the noble lifestyle. She thought that it lacked a lot of entertainment. The kind of entertainment that she wanted. She didn't really like the go schmooze with people kind of entertainment. She wanted to go do stuff and be involved in stuff. So, we can already tell that this is going to be a situation where she doesn't like being told what to do. She doesn't really like being led around. She doesn't like being in subservient situations, because she's going to be already showing really big signs of intelligence. She's incredibly smart. She can read way past her years. She's, again, reading a lot of this stuff at like 8-10 years old that people are publishing for adults. So she's already catching a lot of these ideas. She starts reading stuff like ancient Greek philosophy. She reads Plato, and she reads John Locke's stuff, and she reads a lot of this stuff even like as a kid. So really brilliant. But she ends up having to go back to Russia. And she gets a letter from Elizabeth, who at this point is... let me show you Elizabeth. So this is Tsarina Elizabeth of Russia, who was the head of state in Russia at the time. She sends a letter to Joanna, who is Sophie's mother, and says, look, I know that you were here and we talked about this potential marriage between your daughter and my son, so we should talk about this some more. You should come back over to Russia and we'll talk about this stuff. Now, this is where the intrigue really kicks in, because this guy is Frederick the Great. He's the Holy Roman Emperor at the time. So Frederick the Great finds out about this whole proposal thing, where Joanna and Sophie are going to end up going back over to Russia to end up being Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. KP is Spartacus. Thank you, my friend, as always, for the subscription. It is very much appreciated, and I hope that you're having a good one. So Frederick, was everybody great back then? Lots of people were great. So Frederick the Great, Catherine the Great, lots of people were great. Frederick finds out about this proposal thing. And so he calls Joanna, and he says, look. You need to come see me before you go to Russia. And Joanna's like, okay, cool. You're the Holy Roman Emperor. I'm kind of going to do whatever you tell me to do. So they go to see Frederick, and Frederick goes, here's the deal. I need you to spy for me. And Joanna's like, wait, what now? There's this whole scandal thing, and we don't necessarily have to go into all of it because it's not directly germane. But essentially, Frederick wanted Russia to be friends with the German state Prussia instead of Austria. And Frederick wanted Joanna to get over to Russia and help the people that liked Prussia and hurt the people that liked Austria. And Joanna's like, okay, cool, no problem. I'm going to get it done. And you're going to back my daughter marrying Peter, and we're all going to be happy. And he's like, yeah, fine, whatever. So they go over, and at this point, Sophie's mother is a spy. So they get over to Russia. And this is like 1744. And they pretty much decide quickly that the wedding is actually going to take place. But, you got to do all of the... You got to do all of the setup and the schmoozing, and you got to have the ins and the outs. You got to send invitations, and people got to get ready, and you can't just get married tomorrow because it's going to take like months for this to happen. So, I need you to spy. Why? Reasons? What reasons? Top reasons. Top men. So, in the process of preparing for the wedding, the Empress Elizabeth finds out that Joanna is spying and gets really, really mad about this. And to her credit, young Sophie realizes that her mom has caused a kerfuffle. And basically Elizabeth says, you get to stay here until the wedding, and then the minute the wedding is done, you're out. You gotta go. And also, I'm watching you. But Sophie here plays it really smart, and she's like, oh crap, Mom is an idiot. Got busted, is not particularly very subtle, now I've got to play the game. And Sophie starts taking up the game, and so she goes, I'm going to learn Russian, because if I'm going to be here, I'm going to learn Russian. So she starts working on doing Russian stuff. At one point, she gets kind of sick. And everybody is trying to attend her, and Sophie's mother Joanna comes running in, and she's like, we need to get you your Lutheran priest. And Sophie, playing the good potential empress to be, goes, I don't want a priest from the Lutheran church, bring me my Orthodox Catholic priest. Those are the people that I want, because I'm going to be an Orthodox Catholic. And she starts being really smart about this stuff. She's going to convert to Orthodox Catholicism, which of course her dad hates and her mom hates and a lot of her family hates. But in the background, Elizabeth is like, I like this girl. She sees what's going on, right? She gets it. She is going to be okay. And there's this sort of begrudging respect between the young Sophie, who's at this point 16, Yeah, gangster recognizes gangster, right? Game recognized game. Uh, so between the Empress and this 16-year-old girl who's being basically used as a political pawn between two big empires, and what are you going to do if you're in this situation? You just got to try to play it for the best, right? You got to see what the landscape looks like, and you got to play it however you can. So here's a picture of Sophie right about the time that she was married. So she would have been about 16 at this point. So, she's a princess, or, will be in just a second. Now, the wedding takes place in August of 1745, and literally, as soon as the wedding is completed, the ceremony is completed, Joanna leaves. And she's so mad that she doesn't even say goodbye to her daughter. Because as Sophie was becoming more ingratiated with the Russians, it was alienating her mother, who couldn't ingratiate herself with the Russians because she had been found out to be a spy. Like, nobody would trust her anymore. Nobody wanted to be around her anymore. Her daughter wins and she couldn't handle it. That's exactly correct. Now, Sophie does, like I said, convert to Catholicism, and when she gets baptized, this is going to be when she changes her name. So her baptismal name, or her Christian name, is going to be Catherine. So that's where she sort of changes her name from Sophie to Catherine. To be fair, I've seen bloodshed over a Risk board. Clayton in the Congo, right? That's every Risk game. I love Risk. It's one of my favorite board games. Now, what do? You've married Peter. Oh, I forgot. I need to show you her husband. This is her husband. This is Peter the Third. Now, there are things she didn't like him, and to a certain extent, he didn't really like her either. She thought that he was ugly. She thought that his face was lopsided. She thought that he was way too pale. She thought that he had a bad temper, or temperament, not temper. She didn't like this guy. And that was before the smallpox, right? If the artist was accurate, she's not wrong. She wrote a lot of horrible things about him in her diary. They're going to move into this castle. So this is Oranienbaum. Ooh, and it didn't show up. This castle. Oranienbaum. It's a big old castle. And it's up basically in the border today between Russia and Finland. It's actually on the Bay of Finland. It's very, very, very cold up there. And Sophie really didn't like a lot of the cold weather. She really liked the gardens. And she very frequently wrote to people saying, I can't wait for the friggin' winter to be over because I want to go walk in the gardens. I want to see the flowers. I want to see green stuff because, if we're just being honest, this far up in the north is cold. So if we're talking about where they were situated, they're right about here. Right? So here's, again, where they are. Like, this is pushing Arctic Circle zone. Thank you, Anakin. I caught that reference. They're right about here. So that's where they're living. And this was done as a way to sort of give Peter some political experience. He was supposed to be governor of this territory. But they just didn't really do anything. He was always sort of hanging out with his friends and goofing off, and she really just didn't like him at all. Now, any good Christian wedding is supposed to produce children. especially if you are nobility, and especially if you are the heir of Russia. Here's the thing, though. To have children, you have to have sex. And Catherine did not like Peter. And pretty much refused to have sex with him. Now, this did not go over very well. Yeah, so your standard European royal arranged marriage, exactly. You're supposed to get married and pop out kids within a year because that's what you're supposed to do because that's what God said so. Right. Now, Catherine, Sophie, same person. Catherine refused to have sex with him and said that he was a child and that he wasn't mature enough to have sex. She was clearly smarter than him, and that made him feel inferior because he's the heir of Russia. And this did not go well at all. So he decided that he was going to get a mistress because, that's his prerogative. And when he did that, it was grounds for an annulment, but the issue there was Elizabeth was not going to let them annul the wedding. Elizabeth had arranged it, and she wasn't going to let either of them out of it. So when Peter goes to get a mistress, Catherine decides what's good for the gander is good for the goose. And she strikes up a relationship with this guy, who's Sergei Saltykov. And this is almost certainly going to be Catherine's, not Orla. No, we're not there yet. What Elizabeth has joined, let no God, exactly, pretty much. Sergei is going to be her first sexual partner, and this does not go over very well at all. Because it's okay for the guy to go get a mistress, but it's not okay for the woman to go get a mister. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to have sex with your husband and have babies and make royal heirs. She's not really interested in doing that, though. Now, in the midst of this, right around 1749, there is an attempted coup where some of the people in the Russian military don't like the idea that a woman is running Russia. Again, this is Elizabeth. And they try to elevate Peter to the throne. They want to push Elizabeth out and put Peter on the throne. And Catherine and Peter find out about the coup, and they go, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. Because Catherine wanted to be empress. She really did. She had that sort of goal in mind. This could also be why she didn't necessarily want an heir. Because the longer you don't have kids, the more likely it is that your husband's going to die, and then you could end up being sole ruler. Well, the coup fails, and Elizabeth finds out that Catherine and Peter had sort of thrown in with the coup, and she's like, okay, you're going to have an heir. And they're like, well, that would require us to have sex, and we really don't want to. And Elizabeth goes, I'm going to disinherit both of you. And I'll pick one of Peter's cousins to make the heir. So you can either have a kid or lose it all. And as you might expect, then they're both like begrudgingly like, fine. Peter was part German. He did have some territory over in Germany, and his family did. So again, he's the second cousin of Catherine's family. So like they're all kind of involved here. So Catherine gets pregnant. Now, here's the question. There's a kid that's born in 754. So the coup, by the way, is in 1749. Note, it takes them almost 5 years to have an actual kid. So Paul, the royal heir, gets born. And oh boy, there's a lot of talk. And a lot of people are like, that kid doesn't really look like Peter very much. That kid's Sergei Saltykov's. And a lot of people kind of think that this isn't actually the heir of, the prince. That this is a child that's illegitimately born out of wedlock with the queen's side piece, right? And if we're to believe the original version of Catherine's diary, she kind of thought that it was Sergei's. Now, what's really interesting about this is that right before she died, she went back through and edited a lot of her own diaries and then gave them to somebody to sort of preserve. And in the sort of the second edition, she seemed to edit out this "my kid" thing was not actually the heir thing. So we really don't know who's the father. We need ancient Maury, right? Not ancient. We need Enlightenment period Maury Povich to go do a DNA test and have... it would be really interesting to do genetic testing here. And no, hold on. Oh, that's too tough there, KP. Too tough. Now, after she has Paul, she just has a whole bunch of affairs, and she doesn't really stay quiet about them. And this causes a big ol' stir. A big ol' stir. But she also starts getting involved with the actual Enlightenment movement. For example, she's going to read Voltaire, Voltaire, the famous French Enlightenment philosopher and writer. She's going to start sending this guy letters because, hey, she's the future Empress of Russia, and Voltaire would probably read her letters. And it turns out he did. And they actually start exchanging letters, and they get kind of tight. And she's going to really sort of appreciate this concept of the Enlightenment movement, especially this concept from the Enlightenment called the Enlightened Despot, where you are a sole figure that holds all of the power, but you use it benevolently and wisely because you as an individual are enlightened. So you believe in things like taking care of people and governing people wisely and governing people fairly and not being super corrupt and listening to people when you're making your decisions. So she goes, oh yeah, that's going to be me one day. I'm going to be the enlightened despot. And she kind of sets her mind to it. Like, this is going to happen. Like, I'm going to end up being there. Because that's just the way that it goes. Now, in 1762, Elizabeth is going to die, and Peter becomes the Tsar. You're supposed to have a spare, to which she went, I love how the goal is enlightened despot. Yes, emphasis on the despot. Emphasis on the despot. She wasn't talking about, like, some democratically elected leader. She was all about the authoritarianism. Like, it's not even trying to hide it. She's just saying it out in the open. Like, I'm going to be an enlightened despot. That's just the benevolent dictator with different syllables, pretty much, right? Like, I'm going to be the wise emperor, or the I don't know, the whatever things, words and things, and synonym of benevolent and synonym of dictator. You fill in the blanks, right? The pious potentate. That sounds like a wrestling name. Like, all shall love me in despair. Exactly. She's going to be Galadriel with the One Ring. That's very accurate. That's a good one. That's a good one. All shall love me in despair. Anyway, so in 762, she gets to be the Empress. Well, technically, she's the Empress consort, but, that's because her husband is the Tsar, and she's not, like, full ruling power because he's in charge. I use a thesaurus today, so nobody can accuse me of plagiarizing Marcus Aurelius. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I was going to say like the pious the pious potentate. That sounds like some nickname for a wrestler. If Catherine was going to be like Catherine the Great, and she was going to go attack somebody with a steel chair, one of her nicknames could be the pious potentate. Pious potentate with a steel chair. I don't know. I used to watch wrestling, and I used to really love it, and then I figured out it was fake, and it kind of lost its luster. You know, I was a child, though, so whatever. In 1998, I don't know if I was still watching wrestling in 1998. Oh, I don't know that meme. Or if I do know that meme, I've forgotten that meme. I apologize, Maddie. So 1762, she is Empress Consort. Woo! And if you thought that her hanging out with people was a thing when she was, you know, the heir, the parties go through the roof, man. She's blowing out all the stops, right? She is inviting everybody. She's bringing in all these people from France and people from back in Germany, and she's having these big galas and all these things. And Peter hates this stuff. He hates her friends. He doesn't like her. She's calling all these intellectuals, and she wants to have like the French salon atmosphere over in Russia, and he's not really interested in any of this crap. And he just doesn't get it. So he starts trying to rule. Right, okay, I'm just going to forget this woman, and I'm going to rule my country. And he's not good at it. He's really, really not good at it. He starts trying to get into the political intrigue game, and he's really heavy-handed with stuff. He constantly picks the losing side to back, and he starts alienating a lot of the Russian nobility because he will sort of sell them out if he can see even the potential of benefit. And so he'll sell people out thinking, oh, this is going to win me points, and then it doesn't win in points, but then he sold people out. So it's like he's losing on both ends, and nobody likes him anymore. And this is going to be a constant thing for him. He only rules for 6 months because Catherine's waiting for this junk. She knew he was going to be a crappy leader, and she expected him to be just as inept as he was. And in 6 months, he had alienated so much of the Russian nobility that Catherine, behind his back, at these very parties that she threw that he hated, had organized a coup against her own husband. And she basically convinces a lot of the people in the upper nobility that she'd be more capable than he would. And so he had moved even to another castle. Like, he wasn't even living in the same castle as her anymore. And she trumped up these things where she had received this letter that threatened her life, and he was going to kill her, so she called up a bunch of her friends, and they were like, no, we'll protect you. And in the process of this, they accused him of a whole bunch of, gobbledygook, which is like mismanagement of the state and improper investment of money and impropriety and all of the things that you do to get rid of an emperor. And they arrested him and deposed him. And then Catherine's the only one left. Your term will be record-breaking. Wow, the longest ruler. You meant the longest ruler, right? It's the Liz Truss of the Russian czars. No, he makes it 6 months. I think she was like, 47 days or something like that? 40, I can't remember how long exactly it was. It was not very long. Now, Catherine's going to claim sole rulership. And this is kind of an interesting situation. First off, let's remember, she's not Russian. But She had made friends with a lot of Russian people. Again, she had ingratiated herself with the right people. She knew how to play the game. She had laid out the battlefield of politics in such a way that everybody lined up behind her. So when she declares herself, Tsarina and Empress of Russia, the right people were like, yep, that sounds good. So Peter gets deposed and he dies very suddenly, not too long after that. Now, did they assassinate him? Maybe? We don't know. We do know that at least one other cousin that had a claim to the throne, this guy that was potentially going to be Ivan IV, he does get killed. She just was like, go get rid of that guy. And so, like, they're, he had smallpox. Right. We don't know. She couldn't even outlive that head of lettuce, right? A lot of people think that she killed him. The official word that Maddie's referring to here was that he had become very ill, and that he had been diagnosed with smallpox, and that he succumbed to the illness. He had the smallest of poxes, right? It was only one smallpox, and it was strangely shaped like the blade of a knife, and it was like right there in the heart. Or maybe it was a gun in the back of the head. One pox was right there in the back of the head. Anyway, he was down with the sickness, and he was dead. Now, when she decides to have herself a coronation, oh boy, does she go all out. So, this is her coronation portrait. And, man, she is all about the Empress stuff. Now, she has this particular crown here custom made. It is today one of the royal treasures of Russia. Yeah, very understated. If you want a picture of it, here you go. It's basically diamonds and pearls, and when I say diamonds, I mean like all of the diamonds. Like all of the diamonds. So here's the crown. It's very shiny. Was that a treasure of the Tsars? Maybe? I don't know. I mean, this particular photograph here is actually of a replica. But this was made to scale off of the original. So, this might have been in Treasures of the Tsars traveling around as the replica. But this is exactly what it would have looked like. They made it exactly to scale. Just imagine that these are all real. And, yeah, I remember seeing that too. I got to go see it as a school field trip. And they had, like, carriages, and they had one of the rooms set up with, like, all the furniture and stuff. I could not remember what I saw there other than stuff like that. I know that there were, like, some dinner plates and some of the, like, the silverware that they used. But I can't remember. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff there. I can't remember if this was included in it or not. But maybe so. A garnet the size of your fist, yeah. So Catherine goes all out for the coronation, and guess what? She's the Empress now. And in 762, she's going to enlighten the heck out of this despot. So what are we going to do? Well, lots of stuff. First off, we're going to conquer a bunch of territory because, that's what you do. You go fight people. Well, what has she taken over? Lots of things. So first off, she's fighting against the Ottomans. And she really doesn't like the Ottomans at all. So you can see here that there are multiple Russo-Turkish wars. And she's going to take a lot of this territory, including places, look at it today, places like modern-day Ukraine, part of it right here. To be fair, nobody likes the Ottomans. At that time, that's mostly true. The Venetians were doing some decent trade with them, but most people... Well, I mean, the French kind of liked them to a certain extent, but it was really only because the French didn't have a lot of other natural allies and had to try to find friends where they could. Everybody's got to wear breeches now. The Venetians like anybody that they could trade with. Yeah, exactly. That's the point, right? We really don't care as long as you give us money. What's up, Grow For? It's good to see you. Okay, so we're going to take this land down here from the Ottomans. We're also going to get involved in this big old thing over here, which is called the Partition of Poland. And there are several versions of them, but effectively here, this is going to be part of the territory of Lithuania, and a big chunk of what is modern-day Belarus and part of Poland, and of course then parts down here that are also of modern-day Ukraine. I'm not going to go talk through all of that stuff. If you want to know more about that, check out the special episode on Ukraine, and check out the viewer request episode on the history of medieval Poland. And you can go much more in depth in those two particular situations. So I don't necessarily want to spend all of the time explaining all of the politics. Suffice to say, Catherine is a very shrewd negotiator, and she's not afraid of a fight. Now, of course, wars cost money, and this is where she does get a little bit of criticism, specifically from the Orthodox Church, because she's supposed to be a good Orthodox Christian, right? She nationalizes a lot of the land that is owned by the Orthodox Church and uses that money as war funding, and they don't really care for that very much. So she gets kind of sideways with the patriarchs of the Eastern Orthodox Church. It doesn't sit very well with a lot of them, but what can they do? Not very much, because again, enlightened despot. If it's good for the country, I say it's okay. And I say that fighting the Persian, she does fight against Persia, and takes over some of that territory down there. Those were our serfs, exactly. We'll get to the serf issue in just a little bit. It's enlightened is sometimes in finger quotes, and despot is sometimes underlined, if you know what I'm getting at. Anyway, so she's going to annex part of Crimea. She's going to, all over the Crimean Peninsula. She's going to annex again part of what is modern-day Ukraine, part of Poland, part of Belarus, and this is going to be like the Baltic area is going to get some stuff as well. So she's expanding, and these are bringing in a whole bunch of people, and this is going to kind of change the position of Russia in a lot of global politics. And this is one of the things that Catherine actually really wanted to do. She really liked this idea that Russia should sort of be an unaligned party. And when I say unaligned party, I don't mean something like a Switzerland, which was basically isolated, never going to participate kind of party. I mean that in many situations, Catherine opted for the choice that would allow her to remain neutral while still being involved, if that makes any kind of sense. Specifically, she wants to mediate stuff. If two countries in Europe are fighting, she wants to be the one that is the neutral arbiter. What's up, Saul Goodman? Good to see you. The one that sort of gets in and helps them solve their problems. Because this is what a good ruler should be. A good ruler should be wise and just and accountable, and should help others solve issues. And to a certain extent, and again, she's talking a lot with Voltaire and stuff like this, to a certain extent, she's really down with this idea that the heads of state of Europe should have open discourse and dialogue and be able to communicate things in ways that are, beneficial without going to war or without resulting in lots of bloodshed. She wanted to be Queen Victoria before Queen Victoria. Well, yeah, the British pretty much did this for all of the 1800s. And it's pretty clear, and if we even look at what the position of the British Empire was going up into even the 1900s, let's not forget that the British, they really didn't want to jump into World War I. they had tried to sit out World War One until things got really, really hairy, and the Belgians kind of called them on that. Hey, you agreed to protect us, and now we're getting invaded. The British were trying to be arbiters, and that's not necessarily an idea that they came up with originally in the British world. This is something that Catherine. It wasn't something that Catherine came up with either. This is again one of these enlightened ideas, right, where discourse is more valuable because of the logic involved than violence is, because violence is rooted in passion and emotion, and these are the things that the Enlightenment sort of eschewed, right? We're not supposed to give into our base nature. We're supposed to rise above this and be wise people and discuss things. Come Leonidas, let us reason together. That kind of crap. This is what Catherine really wanted to do, and she does get some successes on this. What's really funny, and a lot of people don't talk about this at all. This is sort of one of the forgotten parts of history, and especially in American history, we don't talk about this at all. It's not. I have taught American history on multiple different levels. I've taught this on junior high level, high school level, and at college level. And I have only ever seen one book reference the role of Russia in the American Revolution. And you're like, wait, what was going on? Well, Catherine was basically behind the scenes trying to get the American colonies and Britain to sign a treaty the whole time. England went to Russia multiple times, basically expecting Russia to jump in the war on their side. George was like, hey, you're German and I'm German, and you should help me out. And Catherine was like, why? And he's like, 'cause rebels. And she's like, I don't have a dog in this fight. Maybe I can try to help you out of it. And he didn't care for this very much. Now, what's really interesting that comes out of this, in 1780, Catherine is going to build a coalition of European leaders that she called the League of Armed Neutrality. Now, what the crap is that? Like, I'm neutral, but I also have guns, so don't screw with me? Pretty much. But what this was specifically targeting was opening trade. And armed neutrality meant we have ships that have guns on them, and while we are neutral in the conflict, we will protect ourselves if you try to jack with us. And what Catherine ended up getting accomplished in a lot of the countries in Europe was opening port cities for American trade. So goods coming out of the colonies and getting to market, because the British, of course, had placed an embargo on all of this stuff. And Britain basically said, if you trade with the Americans, you're our enemy. And Catherine was like, that doesn't make any sense at all. You're having a tiff with your cousins over there. I just want to buy cotton, or my friends just want to buy tobacco. So how about you back the heck off, and we're going to trade with people. And if they get their goods over here, we're not going to not buy them. And you can't do anything about it because we're neutral, but we'll shoot you if you start screwing with us. And this really ticked off the British. Like, really, really ticked them off. At one point, George sort of demanded that she give him a military support, and even said, I'll give you an island in the Mediterranean. He wanted to give her Minorca, right? One of the islands over here in the Mediterranean. I'll give you this island if you will give me an army. Indignant scoffing, exactly. Like, scoffs indignantly in British. Like, oh. Right? I'll give you an island if you give me an army. And she was like, no. I'll sit down with you and the Americans and work out a treaty, though. And she just kept at it, and he hated this junk. She actually was trying to get something going right about the time that the British surrendered at Yorktown in 1781. And I mean, she never really played the military game, right? Like, never actually committed anything, but there was a role in this. Minorca is a heck of a deal. Petulant woman, indeed, right? Like, how dare this woman tell me no? I am king of the British Empire. Uh, if you've ever wondered where the tiff between the British and the Russians came from, this is one of the early moments where the British find out that they can't just expect Russia on their side. Now, of course, that gets exacerbated a lot through the 1800s. A lot through the 1800s. But this is sort of like the first, how dare you? We're not quite to the Great Game, but that's not very far, right? Because Catherine rules until 1792, and the Great Game kicks off not too terribly long after that, right? So this is like, but I thought we would be friends. You're not my natural friend? What's up, Uncle Bill? Good to see you. How's it going? Let's see. She's also going to mediate with some continental European powers. There's a situation in Bavaria where they're trying to have a big old to-do, and she sort of solves some problems down in Bavaria. She's going to open up trade negotiations with Japan, which is going to almost get there, and then the Tokugawa shut it down. But this is mostly going to be, and if we're looking at the world here, a lot of this trade was going to be proposed on these islands right up here between Russia and Japan. And if you wonder why Russia and Japan argue about these islands, well, it kind of goes back to this time. Who owns what? Might be kind of nice if the world leaders were all related and could solve stuff through back channels again. That's fair, Foggage. That's a fair point. I'd also point out that nobody makes you more angry than your family. And I would also point out that World War I was started by 3 cousins. Right? Because Wilhelm didn't really like Nikki. And that was one of the big problems with World War One. That's the other side of the coin. Right. We can back channel stuff, but we can also hate each other's guts because we're all Victoria's grandkids, and Grandma treated us all equally, and we all knew that we were special, right? But the front channels were also warmongering, right? So I mean, hey, everybody wants to be in the warmongering side, right? It's a fair point, though. I mean, I get we could just sit down over a family dinner and hash all this stuff out, right? The other problem was that Nikki thought that Georgie liked him as much as Nikki liked Georgie. That's true. And they did not like each other equitably at all. Georgie kind of thought that Nikki could go take a hike. Anyway, good times. So, the trade deal with Japan gets really, really close but doesn't actually work. This causes some consternation between the countries, and this is going to eventually play into larger issues over there. Still find it hilarious that they had the same actor play those 3 in the Kingsman movie. That was pretty funny. I thought that movie was going to be lame, right? I thought that they were sort of going back to the well too many times, if you know what I mean. Like the premise of Kingsman was a funny movie. And then Kingsman 2 was like, it's kind of out there. Like, do we really? I don't know if we really needed that sequel. And then they're like, but wait, we're going to make a prequel. And I'm like, oh, I just don't know. But King's Man, the prequel, which is the 3rd film, I think is as good or better than the 2nd one. But that's just me. We can debate this stuff. I like the cast of Kingsman better than I like the cast of Kingsmen 2. That's what I think. One Kingsman too far. Ralph Fiennes elevates anything, but it was still... Exactly. I can't get into Kingsman, James Bond, or Harry Potter. I just think English people are boring and lame. Well, I mean, that's fair. Comedy, sure, but not cool. Okay, I mean, hey, that's an opinion that you get to hold. I like all of those, though. I'm a pretty big James Bond fan. I've watched all of the James Bond movies. I'm a fairly big Harry Potter fan. I've read all the books, seen all the movies. That's just like your opinion, man. I mean, everybody gets their opinion, right? I'm not going to get mad at anybody because they say they don't like stuff that I like. That's fine. You thought it was hilarious? You're saying Mr. Bean ain't cool? No, I will agree here. Oh yeah, I know that's great, Lebowski, right? I don't really like Mr. Bean that much. I know that this makes me the odd person out, probably. I just don't really like Mr. Bean. The jokes are I know, I'm blaspheming to many people. There's basically one joke, and it gets told 20 different ways every episode. I mean, Blackadder to me is way better than Mr. Bean. I will go to the mat for Blackadder. I love me some Blackadder. I just don't really care that much for Mr. Bean. It's just not my thing. When I was in Morocco, you managed to snag a copy of Mr. Bean with Chinese subtitles. Holy crap, I bet that's great. And you showed it to your host family because the people in Morocco knew how to speak Chinese? Or you were just buying the bootleg? Bean is so awkward it makes me anxious. See, Bean is awkward is the joke. And it's literally the only joke. Now, he's awkward in multiple situations, and they do vary from episode to episode. But the joke is, hey, this guy's awkward. I get it. I don't need all of it. And I don't need an hour and a half long movie. Like, I just don't need it. I don't need it. I know that makes me a horrible person. I've seen a lot of it. I just don't need it. Back to Catherine though. She did open up trade with China, and was a pretty big proponent of getting Russian goods into China and getting Chinese goods out of China. Now, she didn't necessarily get along with the Emperor of China at the time, but she did like the money that it posed. So even back in the day, Chinese money. There we go, right? Don't think I'm proselytizing Christianity with Merry Christmas, Mr. Bean. I don't know if that's really the message that film gets across, so I don't think you probably have to worry about that one very much. Now, the thing about Catherine, when she's doing all of this stuff, she's still having tons of affairs, right? And everybody knows this, and she's not even trying to hide it, right? She likes what she likes, and, she's just going to do a whole bunch of affairs. Now, of course, this is going to incur the wrath of all of the other people. I found a particularly rude political cartoon of her. This is during the Second Russo-Turkish War, where Catherine was basically trying to take over Constantinople. So we see Russia over here, and we see Constantinople over here. Why are they looking up? Well, you know why they're looking up. And they're saying horrible things. I don't know if you can really tell what all of that stuff is. This particular one right here says, what a prodigious expanse. And that is George of England. So you can tell, like, they don't like her. They don't like the fact that she is, that she's not playing the game their way. And they especially don't like it because she's winning the game, playing her way, but not their way. And this is what happens when you get a powerful female ruler that's in Europe running things. This is Catherine the Great, who also had a lot of lovers and a lot of misters. So it wasn't even Russian, right? But that's the thing. Like, the Russian people mostly well, let's just be clear. The majority of Russian people were serfs and didn't really have a say-so one way or the other. The Russian nobility liked her as long as she was winning, and when she did. They didn't really like the sort of womanizing version of her that, of course, didn't sit well with them. The Russian Orthodox Church hated that part. Paramours. Okay, we'll call it that. Can't win, just change the rules and play your way. Exactly, KP. That's what she did. She changed the rules and played it however she wanted to. But they didn't like that because she was a powerful figure and she ticked a lot of them off. And again, she was smarter than a lot of them, right? She played the game better than they did. And that just got under their skin in such a way because she was like not even trying to hide it. You know, she wasn't even being demure about it. Like, you know, she was just like, gotcha. And they're like, freaking, and done stuff like that, right? Now, if we want a picture of what she was actually looking, yeah, fragile masculinity, indeed. This is what she was looking, and this is a portrait of her in the 1780s. So, at this point, she's in her late 40s, early 50s. And, you know, still the Empress. She's got some military kind of things going on here because, you know, she's won some stuff. Note, these are like these are not vambraces. Can't say the word. Forearm things. I'm losing all of my words tonight because she saw herself as a military leader. Bracers, thank you. Gauntlets. I don't know if they're full-out gauntlets. I know that they're bracers. Thank you all. I appreciate the words because I'm clearly not capable of saying words tonight. Somehow I can say all of the words except for the ones that I want. Vambraces. I said vambraces, yeah. But I think those are technically not vambraces because of the way that they're built. But we'd have to get into arms and armor argument about that. Arguments, I don't even know how to. I'm just going to shut up about that one. Anyway, okay, so back to this concept of enlightened despot. Let's talk about how enlightened she was. Well, she owned a lot of slaves. Now, they weren't called slaves. They were called serfs, right? And not like serfs up, but serfs, like this, right? These are basically peasant farmers. Human trafficker, like on our dollar, yeah, pretty much. Like NERFs, but less rights. Yeah, exactly. That's, you know, there we go. She owned almost 2 million of these. And they had very little rights. They could not own property. They could not move without her say-so. And she very frequently gave them away to her lovers, especially as parting gifts. Because, again, she didn't stay with people, you know, all the time. She would have some on-again, off-again lovers, and she would have some that were her favorite for a while, and then they would go away. Not the most romantic gift. Oh, but Green Herring, what's more romantic than you have this chunk of land and the farmers on it, and for the rest of your life, you get to make money because these people are going to work themselves to death, and all you've got to do is sit back and collect money for the rest of your life. This is basically a pension fund, right? This is instead of having the stock market, you've got the slave market. You just sit back and wait for the money to come in. Right? Please leave your cravat in the fishbowl to be entered into the raffle to win a garnet the size of your fist, right? She does still have a lot of parties, and they're not necessarily a big fan of her spending money on the parties, but they kind of overlook it because she's winning. But she owned a lot of slaves. And we should call the serfs slaves because even though they weren't technically slaves in the purest sense, they had no rights and she could do with them as she pleased, right? If you could walk out to a field full of people and shoot one of them in the head with no repercussion because you control that person's destiny, that's pretty much a slave. I think that we should just call them slaves. Right? So, oh yeah, and the people that she was giving them to they don't like the parties, but of course they're going to go to the party because it's a friggin' party and you're going to get free food and all the good food too, right? Serf means she owned the land they live on. Yes, technically. And that was the livelihood. So you don't technically own the person. Oh yeah. The serfs couldn't move. They were absolutely tied to the land. So if I gave you serfs, I was also giving you the land that they went along with. So that's not very enlightened-y. If we're looking at the Enlightenment, right? Also, super racist. Hated Turkish people. Said some really horrible things about Turkish people, both in her journals and in public. Didn't really like Chinese people. Had a lot of very rude and very obviously racist things to say about Chinese people. At one point, she decided that she was going to ethnically cleanse Russia of Turks. And she said, I'm just going to drive every Turk out of Russia. Like, that was one of her things. Like, I just don't like them. I'm just going to get rid of all of them. And almost succeeded. Because, she's the empress and she can do that. What? Racism in the 1700s? Yeah, I know. It's kind of crazy. Wait for it. Also, anti-Semitic. Because if you're gonna go racist and own slaves, you're sort of angling towards anti-Semitism anyway. You may as well go ahead and accept it, right? Could you conquer a nation by having your serfs simply walk onto their land? Would you therefore own the land on which they walk? Yeah, Animal Chin's like, we're just going to invade you with serfs. It didn't technically work that way, mostly because serfs were so poor and so underfed that they probably wouldn't survive the walk to the other country. And if they did, they also were not armed at all. So if anybody shot at them, you'd just basically be killing, the farmers, because these people were not going to be trained or armed at all. Serfs getting guns was like a big old fear of the Russians. Like, you don't like the idea of that population arming themselves. Ethnic cleansing is not very enlightened. No, it isn't. Monocle pops out, right? Racist human trafficker, pretty much. If you bring your serfs to Africa, are you going to go surfing? Kyle. When did serfdom start? Way back in the medieval world. All the way back when people decided that the lowest class of person was tied to the land and the land was owned by the nobility. Russian serfdom? Pretty much from the get-go. When Russia became an organized nation that started thinking it was European, basically under Ivan, they were like, yeah, we're going to do this whole tie the people to the land thing. Prior to that, back when they were like the Grand Duchy of Moscow or Novgorod, or the big city-state period of time from like the late 800s ish up through like the 1000s ish, there were small landowners that had peasants and stuff like that. There's a great podcast called the Russian Rulers Podcast. Oh, that's interesting. I'm not familiar. I actually don't consume a lot of historical content in my downtime, mostly because my uptime is historical content. So it's like I do research stuff, and then when I get home, I just want to like watch anime or zone out and watch a movie or goof off, right? Yeah, I need a break, exactly. Not saying that there aren't great resources out there that I'm very, very glad that other people appreciate and enjoy. Just that I personally don't go look for that stuff most of the time. So yeah, God forbid you stream games on Twitch. Who streams games on Twitch? Twitch is an educational platform where I teach people. Duh. I just finished a long day of reading primary sources and historical studies. Let me wind down by doing that. More research into historical studies. Exactly. Right. So about this anti-Semitism. If you were Jewish in Russia, you paid double the taxes. Yep. You were also banned from certain jobs. And in certain cities, you were banned from being in the middle class. Right? Like you couldn't even be in the middle class. If you were in Moscow and Jewish, could not be middle class. You were poor. That's just it. Like if you got to the point of trying to be middle class, nope, can't do it. They were banned from living in certain regions. They had the French word for it is petit bourgeoisie, the small nobility. So this is like the business owners, the people that would have trade outpost. Well, not full out bourgeoisie because they're going to be like the nobility. So the petit bourgeoisie are the ones that are like, I'm a very skilled craftsperson and I sell to the bourgeoisie, which means that I can make money off of this. I'm never going to be noble, but I have a lot of money. Or at least I have more money than the average poor person, right? I have disposable income, so you've hit middle class. You couldn't do those sorts of jobs in Moscow if you were Jewish. You also couldn't live in certain regions. There were actually boundaries where Jewish people could and couldn't live under Catherine. So, anti-Semitic. Also, not even really a big fan of some of the people in her own religion. There were a group of people in the Orthodox Church that sort of considered themselves the what we might call the real heirs of the Orthodox tradition. These are the old followers of the old ways. And originally she was like, like, I don't really care if you do your thing. But then eventually she was just like, you know what? I don't actually like you all. So she deported 20,000 of them to Siberia because that's just what you do, right? That's just what you do because, hey, I don't like you. You're in my way. Go to Siberia. 20,000 of you gone, right? Because you're paying in the butt. You're starting to think Catherine wasn't so great at all. Catherine was great, just not good. She was a religious bigot, but at least she was decent to the people in her own religion. Until she wasn't. Let me get rid of this giant surf here. Just burr surf. I have a coworker whose family got deported during all of that, but later immigrated to the United States. Oh, well, there we go. Now, let me see if I can try to save some of the image here, right? That was like the despot side of things. Maybe not the enlightened part. What about the enlightened part? Did she do anything good? She did. She tried for about 2 decades to get a standardized educational system set up in Russia. Now, of course, this wasn't going to be open for anybody. This was going to be relegated to just the nobility, but it was going to be open for boys and girls. And they would be able to take the same curriculum. So that's a pretty enlightened idea for the 1780s, 90s. So she tried to get that. It never worked all the way. There were a lot of political hesitation on the side of the nobility because especially this insistence of hers, like, we're going to teach girls. They were like, I don't really know about that. If we start teaching girls, we're going to end up with more people like you. And Catherine's like, that's the point. That's the point. Siberian ties were, yeah, unfortunate. Boys and girls that Catherine approves of. Yeah, just the ones that she approves of. But it was nobility, but boys and girls. So she tried to do that, which was a good thing, right? She did build and fund multiple orphanages because she felt bad for orphans, as is easy to do. She also built and funded hospitals, and specifically, a lot of her hospitals were free. If you could get there, they were funded by basically the largesse of the crown, and you could get treatment for ailments for free if you could get in. Now, of course, a lot of these were very, very busy, and you couldn't get in, and of course, they weren't everywhere. They didn't really have telehealth back then. You didn't really make appointments. You just showed up and they hoped. But this was working for the public good, right? And she did fund stuff like Public Health Works. For example, smallpox vaccinations. She herself was vaccinated against smallpox and funded a whole bunch of people to get smallpox vaccinations. So, I mean, she's not just the despot. She is doing some enlightening stuff. She was a big, big patron of the arts. She herself wrote extensively. She wrote plays and music and poetry, but she also funded a lot of people doing a lot of this stuff. A lot of the people that were at, the big theater groups were very excited about putting on shows for Catherine because she'd fund the whole thing. She was a big fan of getting these writers together and having kind of like a little writers retreat in the palace where people would get brainstorming ideas and go out and do stuff. She did a lot of stuff when it comes to science as well. Again, like this whole concept of bringing in the Enlightenment to Russia, this was not something that she took lightly. She invited all these people over. She really tried to get people inside of the Russian sphere to pick up a lot of these ideas of, when I say science here, this is more of like scientia, the old idea of the Greeks where we're studying the world. We're not just studying like biology. And she was a big pusher of all of that stuff. She actually did create a lot more local government. Now, of course, this government was limited in scope, and of course it was all run by the nobility, but any local government is going to offer the potential for more people to have a say-so in their own life. And while this is not saying we're going to free the serfs and let them have voting rights and stuff like that, that didn't even happen until people died over it. It didn't really happen even until the Communist Revolution. The freeing of the serfs thing that was under Alexander was actually kind of a joke, but we'll eventually get to Russia and we'll talk about that. So she did expand local government. So it's not like she wasn't trying to do the Enlightenment stuff. It's just that she was also doing the despot stuff, right? So enlightened and despot. Got to have the both to get the Catherine. Now, she's going to die in 1796. This is a portrait of her in 1794. It's one of the last portraits that she posed for. And in 1796, she is going to have breakfast and then have a stroke. And she's going to die the next day from complications from the stroke. And that's going to be... I don't actually know the name of her dog. That's a great question. I'm assuming that the dog would have a name, but it could also just be sort of a prop, right? Because it was a very popular thing at that point to have a dog. I don't know what that building is. The monument here in the background. I don't know. That's a great question. Dobby the house elf. I think this might actually be a whippet. I don't think it's a Dane. The really skinny legs here and the very long neck might be a whippet. But I don't know what the thing here. It could also be a greyhound. I don't know. Oh, that was a great joke. Gotcha. Whippet good. What up, Steve? I see you back there. How's it going, man? So anyway, this is her just before her death, just a couple of years. And she's going to die in 1796. Now, She does die of a stroke. But that doesn't mean people don't make up rumors about how she died. And the rudest and also most popular rumor about her death was that she died as a... Okay, how do I even say this in the PG-13 way? Maybe I shouldn't have even talked about it. This was something done to slander her because, of course, she was a very promiscuous individual. And the thought was that she died being crushed by a horse. And the reason she got crushed by a horse is that she was trying to do the deed with a horse. To satiate her insatiable desires. And that rumor got spread around a lot. A lot. So, you remember that episode of the Venture Brothers? I don't remember that episode of the Venture Brothers. Anyway. I mean, people have definitely died doing that exact thing before and since. Yeah, see, that's where I'm just going to have to leave it. Like, if you want to go look that up, you can go look that up. That was a rumor. More of the prodigious expanse thing. Exactly, Uncle Bill, exactly. This was another attempt to get one more slander at Catherine on the way out the door, right? But that is Catherine the Great. Despot, enlightened despot, usurper. You get to decide. There you go. So, yeah, that's all that I wanted to say. The reverse leading of time. So I hope that was everything that you all thought it was going to be. I know that a lot of people like the idea of doing Catherine the Great as a viewer request stream, so I hope that was everything that everything you could love and ask for and more. So yeah, I thought it was going to be about a different Catherine the Great. Which Catherine the Great did you think it was going to be about? Oh, your aunt. I don't know your Aunt Catherine, so I couldn't probably give a good account of that as a historical thing. But it is time for us to choose our next adventure because we're done with this one, and we don't have to go, but like it's time to pick the next adventure. So we shall go down the list, and we'll see who is here. If you are here, speak so, and you shall be on the list. Is David Peterson here? So here's the list: David, JMR Killer, and Moose. I know Moose is here. David is on the road. He's probably not on the road right now. He's probably sleeping right now. Where do viewers submit requests? Animal Chin, we have two different kinds of requests. One of them is, do you have the stuff or have the points to buy one? And then the other one is voting, and we alternate. So we voted for this one. Now, if people are in the chat and want to buy one, you can buy one. So David's probably not here. JMR Killer does not appear to be here. And I know that Moose said, hey, I want to get on the list. Opinion hat has been summoned. Moose, do you... I know you have the points, but do you still have a topic that you would like to purchase? All right. I will put on the opinion hat. Let me turn this on real quick. Viewer rewards, channel points. Manage rewards and challenges. All right, go ahead, Moose. Who would be Catherine the Great's analog in the Tolkien universe? Well, I'll tell you who it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be the version of Galadriel in Rings of Power. Um, that's a analog for Catherine in the Tolkien universe. Man, this is tough. This is really tough. Moose, the point redemption is there. So you can go ahead and buy that if you want to. I'm pretty sure I turned it on. Yeah, it should be there. Man, that's tough. Probably one of the Númenórean kings. Probably this character, Tal Telperion. And I mean, I could say these names, but you probably wouldn't have any sort of reference for any of this stuff. A lot of these characters are so far deep into the lore that it's hard to just drop a name, right? Tar Telperion was a ruling queen of Numenor, and basically she wanted to rule by herself. She wanted to be a queen, and she didn't want to have kids because she was like her own person, and this made a lot of people pretty upset. She didn't want to have kids. She never actually did have kids, and she wouldn't even name a successor, which made a lot of people really, really upset because she ruled for a very long time, even for somebody that was a Númenórean. So probably Tar Telperion. Tar Telperion. Good lord, there's just too many letters there. So if I had to make a direct comparison, that would probably be the person I would choose. So I know that's probably not what you may have hoped for. I'm sure that somebody wanted me to say something like Galadriel or, Elrond or something like that. That was a lot more easily recognized. But this is sort of the danger that you get when you ask me stuff about Tolkien, because it's a deep well. It's a deep well, my friends. So there's that. At least you made me work for it. Hey, that's fair, right? That's fair. It wasn't just like a top of the head, like, oh, it's clearly this. I had to go through the list of Númenórean kings, which is it's not a common thing in the world. What is the All Opinion Hat stream? Okay, so this is the Opinion Hat. And typically speaking, when I'm doing the episode stuff, I'm doing my best to relay the information in an unbiased way, because it's sort of what a teacher should do. right? I show the material, and then you kind of get to make up your mind about what you think about it. And I try to take a middle of the road approach in a lot of this stuff. But we created the adventure hat. I'm sorry, the opinion hat here, because I wanted to designate when I'm talking completely out of context of something, or maybe I'm just like ranting or giving my opinion. Just a visual reminder that when the hat is on, what's coming out is biased, effectively. And people have always, when people have always gone like, I wonder what he would really think about this or that. And so I decided, what if we just did a stream where I just did the whole stream in an opinion hat, and it's just sort of like free for all, whatever you want to talk about, I'll just tell you what I think. When Shane is wearing the hat, we learn what he really thinks about a topic personally. That's a much better way of putting it than what I said. Thank you, Uncle Bill. Yeah, so it's very opinionated, and it's very biased, and it's what I think, instead of what I'm trying to choose as an objective reality kind of thing, right? He does self-censor and holds his... Yeah, I do. But when I'm wearing the hat, this is... Well, I mean, I don't cuss. Or I try not to. I let a cuss word out over the weekend. On Saturday, I said a cuss word on stream. And then I immediately apologized for it, so... So when the goal is full, yeah, exactly. And we've decided, well, I guess I decided that, actually, we just hit the goal. Somebody today, I said that 1 million was way too much because I thought nobody's going to have enough points to get this done. And the issue isn't that there's not enough points out there. The issue is that you can only donate 2,000 points a stream. So I said that when we get to 600,000, I will consider it met. So we have just hit 60% funded, which means that we crossed the 600,000 point threshold. So now we will have the all opinion hat stream. And I'll get banned from Twitch. Or at least I'll say things that get people upset. I don't know when we'll do that, but we can... everyone just unsubs, right, and runs away. Or go viral, which is bad. So basically, we're just going to get on stream, and I'm going to chat for probably about an hour and a half, and whatever comes up, I'm just going to tell you my opinion about. Okay, so here's the thing. I can't actually close the opinion hat stream. Because if I close it, it's telling me that the only way to close it is to refund all of the points. And the point of this was for you all to have something to spend your points on, so I'm not going to refund them. But don't donate to that anymore unless you just want to waste the points. So don't donate anymore to... I can't lower it. I can't change the goal. I can't change the duration. I can't change anything. I either have to... I basically just have to let it run out, and it's got 27 days left. So don't donate anymore to that. And that's a dumb thing. I can't just turn it off. I can't turn it off. I can't shut it down. The only thing I can do is refund all the points. So just don't donate any. And there goes Foggage. Okay, Foggage. Foggage is like, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to burn these points. I cannot change anything except for refunding all of the points. I cannot change anything except for refunding all of the points. That's the one move that I have, and I'm not going to do it. I can't change anything except for refunding all the points. So let's go through all of the other things that I could potentially change so that I can tell you that I can't change that either. All right. Nix asked, what's in the news? I'm wearing the opinion hat. Yeah, I should take this off. What's in the news? A lot of things are in the news. There was a big explosion in Bangladesh's capital that killed a whole bunch of people. And it could quite possibly be because their infrastructure sucks and they have natural gas lines that blow up. But it's killed like 15 people and injured a few hundred, or about 100 people more. That's no good. Estonia had elections, and the anti-Russia party in Estonia is going to end up having a much easier chance of forming a government. So, yeah. So the Wagner Group thing about starving him of ammo was from about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Lumpy. They have since received ammunition, and they're pushing at Bakhmut again really, really hard. And they might even be on the verge of taking Bakhmut. Now, Zelensky has said that he's not going to abandon Bakhmut, but might end up having to. Russia just today mobilized some tanks that haven't really been used since like the 1970s. The British military saw some activity on some old scuttled stuff. So the BBC got their timeline wrong. I mean, maybe they're doing it again, but I don't think so. Or if they're doing it again right now, I haven't seen it. The Prigozhin guy that's running the Wagner Group was griping about that a lot about 3 weeks ago. And then the Russian government said that they would, because Prigozhin posted a picture of a giant pile of dead Russians and said, this is what happens when you don't give me bullets. And then the government was like, fine, we'll give you bullets. Now, they might not be giving him any more, and he might be griping about it again. That's quite possible. I have not read all of the news today. I was very, very busy at work. U.S. infrastructure is passing with a C-. Woo! These are T-80s, Moose. The ones that they're rolling out right now. Not the T-55s. The T-80s that they're sort of bringing out of mothball. You've always been fond of Estonia since you saw their flag as a 6-year-old and thought that looks cool. Hey, that's good enough for me, right? We get those anyway, we just bug them enough. 1 million points to stream Lord of the Rings. Like stream the movies Lord of the Rings with me commentating? I'd have to do that on Discord. That actually isn't a bad idea. We could do like a watch party on Discord. I would have to be enticed to do that, though. Oh, like a deep lore commentary. Yeah. So the tanks are basically Ukraine design. At that point, well, it depends on what part of the 70s. If it was Brezhnev 70s, probably not. If it was Khrushchev 70s, maybe. Because a lot of the Ukrainians got pushed out under Brezhnev. Are they on Prime? Yes, they are on Prime. Oh, I can do a Prime watch party on Twitch. That's interesting. Are not tortured, incentivized. So here's the thing. I've seen those movies a lot. And I don't necessarily need to see them again. And if we remember, if it's the extended versions, those movies are like 4 hours a piece. So 4 hours of streaming with me doing commentary is like 5 hours or 6 hours. That's a really, really long stream for me. And I don't usually stream that long. And even though it would be something that I know people would like, I don't necessarily want to just throw in 18 hours worth of streaming without some sort of worth my while thing. Cave told me where you live to send the torturers. Why did Cave tell you where I lived? Now I'm really wondering why you have my address. What about the Hobbit films? I would literally have to set up a donation goal to get me to watch the Hobbit films again. I would not do that without getting paid. You told him I wanted you to be tortured, and he gleefully shared. Have you mailed me something? Oh my god. Lord of the Rings appears to have fallen off Prime. Okay, well that's okay. I don't know what's worse, the fact that you mailed me something or the fact that I don't know if you've mailed me something. I wonder how the Hobbit films would be viewed if Peter Jackson had never made the Lord of the Rings films beforehand. By me? Very similar. I mean, yeah, but why are you going to... You could just come see me. Like, just text me. It's like, hey, I want to come hang out. Like, okay, cool. Let's go do it. Right? Anyway, it's about time for us to go do the Raidy Raid because we're just... I'm getting ever more anxious that people are doing stuff. KP was among the first to join the masked torturers. Oh my... okay. I think you all are just kind of screwing with me right now. And you're doing so very successfully. Very successfully. I don't know how you're doing it or why you're doing it, but you're doing it very successfully. So we're going to go do a raid, and I'm going to go... I don't know what I'm going to go do. Yeah. So he did the thingamabobber. So he redeemed the points and told me that he wanted me to do Yi Sun Sin, who's basically a Korean naval hero, I guess is the right way of saying it. I mean, he's an admiral. They don't really call him admirals, but like he's the naval leader during this period of time that's called the Imjin War, which is in the mid 1500s between Japan and Korea, and this guy's basically undefeated in all of these different bouts, and it's pretty cool. Yeah. You're good. I appreciate you keeping up with that. How about a critique of the armor in Jackson's movies? It's better than it should have been. We'll just put it that way. Let's go raid Nixolotl. Nixolotl is an artist and animator. If you are familiar with the Puppy Head Pat emote, this is designed by Nixolotl. So we're going to go give Nix a raid. Nix is currently working on a VTube animated avatar for someone, and they're pretty cool. So let's go share some love with Nix. When we get there, we're going to yell adventure, and you can put your adventure hats into the chat, and we'll all have a good day. Come back on Thursday, and we'll be talking Balkan history in the 800s. But until then, everybody, take it easy. Have a good one. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you next time.